Okay, welcome everybody to this session on how to build KOL relationships digitally in what I'm sure so many people are getting sick and tired of is this new normal. But it is going to be a great session. We've got a lot of information to share. Joining me in this session is Lana Feng, who is the CEO and co-founder of Huma, as well as Jason Howard, who is the scientific and engagement medical digital lead with Sanofi Genzyme. Lana, Jason, thank you very much for being here.
It's great to be here. It has been such a fun conference and love the MSL community. So we'd love to be here and share some of our experiences.
Awesome.
Agreed. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I think the first place we want to start our session today is what is this new normal? Let's talk about that new normal. First slide that everybody is seeing here is a couple of questions that was asked in a survey, the first survey with KOLs earlier this year with 475 KOLs. And this survey was really about how KOLs prefer to engage with MSLs during the COVID-19 pandemic. And so we got a couple of interesting questions and two specific questions from that survey. And I want to start there. And Jason, I'm going to start with you. We think about this, how this COVID-19 pandemic has had a big impact, and dare we say a dramatic impact and shift on a lot of different aspects of the typical MSL function, including face-to-face interactions with KOLs, and which is why this data, as we see here, is so important. Certainly, one of the things that has come out of that is MSLs have had to pivot, and they've had to learn new ways to leverage things like digital tools, which is certainly the focus of our conversation here today, to build and even strengthen value-added relationships. I want to start here with two things. First, I'd like for you to kind of tell me what you see here with this data, and what are some best practices that you guys are using, or that you've heard or learned from other successful MSLs.
Yeah, so looking at the data, I would say this feels about right based on what we're experiencing in the field. And what we're seeing, that email is obviously the easiest. I've been actually quite surprised with the uptick in Zoom and video conferencing that people have been willing to accept. So that's been nice. I've actually, in my experience, I've seen more video than telephone, but clearly those are two channels that are going to be used a lot. Honestly, I think the best approach is you have to take an individual approach, even more so than before, in managing that relationship with the KOL. They have different abilities with technology. They have different backgrounds. They have different time constraints. Obviously, these things were in play before, but they're more critical now. So what you really need to do is take an accounting and really understand how that KOL is comfortable interacting. You think sometimes the younger clinicians might be more tech savvy. Not always. Sometimes you want to be a bit ageist and think some of the older clinicians aren't as tech savvy, and many of them are. So you really need to reach out and get an understanding of how they want to move forward, because thankfully the data that the MSL Society has provided has said that they want that interaction, they want that value. So you have an opportunity to still provide it. You just have to really personalize your approach.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is great. Great place to start. Lana, any thoughts or comments on this?
Thank you, Samuel. I have a couple of thoughts on this. First is that this adoption on video is really great. If you look at the sort of telemedicine as a whole, that there's a CMS publication that before COVID, there were on average about 13,000 these remote telemedicine engagement between patients and their doctors. And then by the end of April, that went up 100-fold into 1.7 million. So I think this driving into digital platform is from all stakeholders, right? Requirement from patients, and then doctors have to use, virtual to engage with both patients. And then I think MSLs, this is a golden opportunity. I know it's challenging. The old playbooks don't work anymore, but this also, there's a silver lining to do this. And then secondly, my comment on the 82% email is really interesting. I think I read it somewhere that only 3% of the emails from pharma are opened by HCPs. So really kind of how do you stand out? What is your hook so that the doctors open your email is really important. So it's all about this personalized and targeted engagement.
Yeah, and I think one thing about when I see this data, and Jason, I'm going to go back to you and see if you could make a comment on this. When I see this data, what this really says, especially this bottom part, is old technology, forget the new, old technology, i.e., sort of the classic standby, email still works. And people are so focused right now and worried about MSLs getting on these virtual calls, and they're hammering KOLs with requests. But I think what this data says is that KOLs still are willing to exchange and engage with MSLs. But we are seeing the 55%, so that's encouraging. But if you look at email and telephone over there on the left, it still works. Any comment on that, Jason?
Yeah, one of the things that I noticed in my experience was this has provided positives and negatives, right? So asynchronous working is really typical in digital, but it's not typical in the clinic, right? The clinic is very regimented from the standpoint of time. So we've had problems where, hey, look, when you saw that KOL in person and they were running late, they got backed up in the afternoon. Well, you were already there. You've committed your afternoon to meeting. I can wait another 30 minutes, no problem. But in this new digital world, you have call after call after call that you've scheduled very regimentally, and you don't have that flexibility. So that's a negative. The positive, though, on the KOL side is I've had many meetings with KOLs at their house, right? They can schedule these calls during their personal time, and they're not rushed. They're not hurried. They're having a better conversation. It's more like that conference conversation that you have instead of perhaps that hurried conversation you might have in the clinic. So, it's a mixed bag. There's negatives depending on scheduling, but then there's positives depending on getting that extra flexibility into personal time, which actually for a lot of my meetings worked out quite well.
Yeah, and just to clarify, Jason, meeting at their home, this isn't you sitting in their living room, right?
Absolutely.
Because that would be a totally level of relationship. Yeah.
It was a little strange to see how casual some of my KOLs were taking it, because I had established relationships with them in suits, and then they log on in a t-shirt, and I'm going, whoa, it was a bit shocking at first, but that's, hey, you talk about the new normal. That's the new normal.
That's the new normal. I guess I'm going to just stay on this slide just for one more minute. Any other, as you guys look at this these slides, it's clear that KOLs are saying virtual is here to stay. So we see that across the top. What's working, Jason? And Lana, I want you to address this too from the companies you're working with. But I'll start with you, Jason, thinking about best practices. I mean, one of the things that obviously a lot of MSLs and managers are on this call and trying to hear best practices and what's working. Anything specifically on this slide so far that that you could share that is working?
Yeah, you really have to be tailored about your email approach, and I think this data really speaks to that. Email is still important, right? I took to becoming very streamlined. I tried to shorten my emails as much as possible. They're getting hammered with requests right now, and it's all digital, right? I really like leveraging conferences to remind KOLs of our relationship and our interactions. It's a really natural touch point to reach out around a major conference and say, hey, I know things are weird right now. We normally meet around this time, and it's a very natural time to reach out. I even streamlined it to the point, and some of the folks on my team adopted this as well, is to give them a numbered list of options. 1, yes, I'd like to meet during the conference. 2, yes, I'd like to meet, but after the conference. 3, I am completely swamped, but I'd still like to meet at some point in the summer or in the winter or whatever it is. And you give the KOL an option to reply with one number, and you get all you set it up for them. And you'd be shocked at how many one number replies I got back, just saying, hey, I don't have time to respond now, but I do want to meet, and they can get that done with a 1 or a 2. And so that actually worked quite well to try to minimize the intrusion.
Yeah, excellent. Lana, any thoughts on this with some of the companies you guys are working with?
I think the central theme is, driven by data, right? Let your interactions really kind of driven by data, particularly insights. So I think I've heard somewhere that, companies who are successful leveraging insights are actually more successful in their medical affairs functionality. So I think the insights are really important, not only sort of personalized insights, right? Insights also relating to their patients, and also, trending and maybe in the therapeutic area, or what other KOLs or HCPs in that therapeutic areas or in their sort of network are saying, and what are the trending insights. So those are really important.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Let's transition a little bit and think about what is not here is a very hot topic, and a lot of companies are still trying to understand and how to utilize social media. So what we want to do is in your app, for all the people listening, in this session, you're going to see a poll. We have a couple of them in this session. And our first one is we want to find out, does your medical affairs team currently leverage social media for clinical insights? So take your phone out, get in the app. That's a shameless plug that you should be using your app. It's a good excuse. But vote now. It's live. It's dynamic. 50-50 shot here on what everybody's doing. Yes or no? Just give it a second here, and we'll be able to respond here with the answers. This is going to be an interesting discussion here because the FDA and other regulatory bodies are still trying to figure this out and offer official guidelines on how we leverage this. So I think a few more people are voting here. Okay. Let me start with you, Jason. Surprised by these results? How do you react to this?
So I'm not surprised, but I'm happy to see the growth. So last time I was with the MSL Society and we were discussing social media usage, it was actually the yes was down around 10. So it's nice to see in a larger sampling that there's actually been some growth. I'd be interested to know if this was driven by lockdown, by looking for new avenues for clinical insights. But I'm actually not that surprised. And for one of the reasons that you pointed out, there has not been a lot of guidance around the usage of social media from the FDA. And I think a number of the larger pharma players in the space are a bit gun shy. They think, if I open Pandora's box, there's no closing it. I'm of the opinion that it's open. It's already been opened. And frankly, it's a great opportunity to individualize your approach to managing your relationship with your KOLs.
Yeah, excellent. Lana, any thoughts here on this?
My thought is that you have to be leveraging social because your customers are there. So on the data shows that in 2019 only 34% of the doctors on social media, and then this year it jumped up to 46%. So it's a huge increase in terms of, if you think about the doctor population, they're typically kind of technology adverse somewhat, right? So I think this is a huge opportunity if you don't use it. Of course, we have to adhere to the regulations and guidelines. And then here, not surprisingly, FDA is playing catch up as usual, right? Technology have been evolving so quickly.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised either. And I think it's clear that we're seeing more and more KOLs, and especially obviously during COVID,
Yep.
we're seeing more and more medical societies and that, and move to by necessity or out of necessity to the social media platforms. But I think when I look at this, and I'm sure a lot of people are wondering this as well. And Jason, I'm going to go back to you on this and see if maybe you could respond to this. Um, do we need to clarify and do we need to have some definitions and context put around the word leverage? Like in other words, is that mean engagement or is that just monitoring? What do you think about that?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think in the broadest sense, you can look at social media leveraging in pharma in two buckets, right? There's a commercial leveraging and then there's a medical affairs leveraging. Commercial has the opportunity to reach out, right? They can have branded content that's been approved by the company and they can market and all those things that are associated with the commercial half. In the medical affairs world, okay, we're not proactive, right? We understand the difference between proactive and reactive engagement. We're 100% in a listening mode, okay? And we are scanning and using, the various technologies that we have available to us to do that in the best way possible. But what we're more interested in isn't necessarily who is consuming the content, which is what they're interested in on the commercial side. But in the medical community, we're interested in what they're saying and to whom, and that's a very
Hmm.
different use case.
Hmm.
And honestly, it can vary very differently depending on where you are. In the United States, the regulations aren't as strong. In the EU, collection of personal data is a lot stronger. And it's a different question. I know this is a global meeting right now, so I would encourage everybody to look at your local guidelines and get an understanding of what you need to understand before you dive in to this within your own countries. In the United States, I think the FDA has sort of taken the approach of I know it when I see it, which is not great. That's all.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a very squishy endpoint. So in the meantime, what we do is we understand that as MSLs, as medical affair professionals, we've been trained on how to handle pharmacovigilance data, right? We've been trained that, and for those of us who are working in the social media spheres, we just say, look, we understand that we have the potential to be exposed to more of it than the average MSL, but let's be understanding and let's be compliant and let's handle everything the way we need to do, because I think companies are starting to see the value in mining this data for driving internal strategy.
Yeah, excellent points. Lana, any thoughts on that in
I
terms
really
of
love
leveraging? And yeah, sorry, go ahead.
That's fine. So I really love what Jason said about 100% listening mode. From our working with our customers, that definitely there's a distinction between commercial and MSL. And we do see more customers start to leverage social media information to kind of map out who are the digital opinion leaders, right? What are they saying? Are they anything that kind of we can map it out and leverage our existing KOL relationships?
Yeah, excellent. Let's take a couple of questions from the audience because there's a lot of stuff coming in because I know this is an important topic and again trying to learn some best practices. Jason, Barbara has asked if patients are on the social media site, how do you communicate with a KOL compliantly, or are you?
Yeah, we do not. That's a great question, and it's really important. We do not do any public communication. Absolutely not. We have to remember that this is forever. There will be a record of it forever, and we do not want to provide. We do not want to have the image of promotion. Okay. So what do we do? Why? So then, why are we looking at this information? Well, as a group, you can look at it as driving your strategy when you find trends and sentiment. As an individual MSL in the field, you can use this information in your opening email. Hey, Dr. So-and-so, I noticed on Twitter the other day, you said X, Y, and Z, right? That's fair. You're having a private conversation with this KOL. I'd love to learn more. Boom. Right now, hey, you've demonstrated to them that you've done your homework. You're open to opening the door. And frankly, these people are putting themselves out there to be discovered, and they're flattered when someone notices a point they've made online. So you can personally use that information to not only leverage the opening to a conversation, but jump into a deeper conversation right off the bat instead of having to go through the sort of introductory conversations that we tend to have.
Excellent. Lana, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, that is the one of the hooks that I was talking about earlier. And particularly HCPs do care about their patients. So anything kind of relating to that definitely get their attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, excellent, excellent. Let me take one more here. And Jason, I think this is just a question that a lot of those out there listening have got several questions like this. But Sarah has asked, for those using social media, is it primarily Twitter, or are you using other social media? What's working?
So, yeah, I've said this before, and I really believe it, that Twitter, that medical discussion sphere of Twitter, is the best use case of Twitter out there. It really is. There's a lot of garbage out there. I think we all know that. But Twitter, the ability to organize people around that digital water cooler across the globe, has been fantastic. So yes, I would say Twitter for sure is a major component of what we're looking at. But that's not the only component, right? There are medical specific social media platforms that you can access. There are news feeds which mention your KOLs, right? That's not traditionally what you consider social media, but it's definitely digital media. We steer away from Facebook. That tends to be more, personal relationships. I'd love to get access to LinkedIn conversations, but they're very, very protected. That's sort of their value proposition, so they protect that quite heavily. Depending on the disease, so here's an interesting one. Dermatology is very engaged on Instagram compared to other disease states. Why? It's a visual disease, right?
Yeah.
And Instagram is a very visual medium. So you might find that your disease state interest in social media platforms is really dictated by the type of disease and how the people are organizing. I would say the majority of them have done so on Twitter, but like that dermatology example, you can see examples where different platforms have been meeting places for these different disease states.
Yeah, depending on their needs. Yeah, it's a great
Yep.
point. Lana, any thoughts on that?
So yes, medical Twitter, it's great for social listening, extracting trends and mining. And then I think in terms of building relationships between MSLs and their HCPs or KOLs, I would like to kind of give a shout out to LinkedIn, because I think LinkedIn is kind of underutilized because of the privacy reasons, but a lot of the doctors now on LinkedIn. So particularly, some of their medical practices are like furloughed. They're doing marketing on LinkedIn as well. So I think LinkedIn should be a great platform for you to kind of get into their network, connect with them, and so that's a great way also to know like what they're talking about and other stakeholders in your sphere talking about, even pharma companies. Who are the thought leaders? Who are the thought leaders on the clinical side, on the pharma side? And then the other thing I want to say is a slogan is make algorithm work for you. So you connect with them, all of a sudden your network starts to give you feeds and then notifications on these things. So you really kind of stay in the know. That's a great source of data for you to kind of personalize that email, if you will, to get them to talk to you and just schedule meetings.
Yeah, a lot of great tips here. Um, there's a lot of questions about social media, and maybe we'll be able to come back to this. We've got some other things that we want to address. So everybody, please keep the questions coming. We're trying to get to as many of them as we can. Just transitioning a little bit. You think about other for some reason. Well, I can't advance. We've been having some technical issues. Jeff is on the background. Jeff, can you take control of the slides from me, please? Sorry about this, everyone. And just give me a second, guys. I'll be back up here. Excellent. Jeff, can you give me control back? Thank you.
I'm just glad you're controlling the slides, not me.
Okay, we should be back up. Can you guys see my slides?
I was going to say that this is part of our new normal too, so don't sweat it.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
This is the reality of using technology to absolutely. Just a visual check. Jason, Lana, can you see the slide here?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Jason, I'm going to let you start with this. Everybody can breathe now. We got data back and slides back. So this is really about, we want to talk about other resources that are being used to leverage to build new KOL relationships. Jason, I'm going to let you start with this.
Yeah, the pandemic has actually provided some new opportunities. I try to be positive. I try to be, productive, and it's easy to get bogged down in the problems, but a lot of things have moved to digital platforms now. So while on one hand, it can be difficult to build a new relationship because, hey, look, I don't know who you are. I never met you at a conference. It's much easier to leverage that in-person relationship into a digital relationship. But a lot of these clinicians are now moving into more digital spheres. For example, virtual conference presentations. All the conferences are virtual. They're having the same interaction that we are, and those are available not only to determine who's doing what, but what they're saying, and as a source of clinical insights. Webinars. A lot of patient advocacy groups are organizing different disease state webinars, and you can leverage those and finding out who's talking about what and why. Podcasts. There are lots of podcasts that are exploding right now due to our lockdown. And looking at this slide, clinicaltrials.gov may be an underutilized resource for a lot of people. PubMed actually may be a lot of underutilized depending on how you use it, right? So you can get really specific with your query searches beyond just disease state or a KOL's name. If you're looking to break into a new disease state space, whether that's with a new indication launch or you're a new MSL, you can get hyper specific with your query searches down to the state. You can look into the FAQs on how to do that. And you can really tailor your searches such that when everything that comes up is going to be within your territory instead of having to wade through a lot of extra stuff. So, you have opportunities to leverage relationships in your own company with legacy employees. There's a lot of opportunities there to try to best convert that personal relationship into a digital one for someone starting out.
Excellent. Lana, anything you want to add to this?
I totally agree that new normal is that, these personalized relationship. First, your relationship with KOL has to be targeted and personalized. Secondly, it has to be curated. It has to be driven by data and have this 360 view, like Jason mentioned, of all these different data sources. That's actually why we build our platform. This is a plugin for Huma.ai. Really we try to solve this problem, how we can make it so easy that put all these data at your fingertips, just ask a question, make your data talk to you. So I think it's very important. And also someone, I think yesterday mentioned about, what if there's new data, right? It becomes even more important trying to find that nuggets, mine your existing data, trying to find that nuggets to establish relationships.
Yeah, and I think that we've seen this has been brought up on a few sessions now during the conference here. A big challenge is, I started my MSL career 20 years ago, and it was a different world. Of course, the role has evolved, and the role has evolved a lot in the last 9 months, right? We've all had to pivot. But I can't imagine now going out in the field and doing this from the start because clearly one of the challenges is, as the title says, building new relationships. What if you were just hired, or you're in transition, right? You were an MSL before, and now all of a sudden you're going to new KOLs, new therapeutic area, trying to build new relationships. Jason, any thoughts, tips, best practice? What has worked from what you've seen from the new MSLs that are on your team or other new MSLs that you know?
Yeah, it's a challenge, but initially I really thought that this was going to be the biggest challenge for new MSLs coming in with no prior background. And actually speaking with my colleagues over the last few weeks, you know, it's not just the new MSL. You can be representing and supporting a drug that's been around for a while, and then, hey, a new indication comes out in a completely new disease state. You're in the exact same boat that the new MSL is. You have some more experience, right? You have more experience in navigating those channels, but you're going to be still at square one as far as trying to convert these what would have been in-person meetings, in-person relationships into digital ones. So I think it's easy to say that the new MSL is going to have the hardest time, but really experienced MSLs with a new indication are not too far behind. So what do you need to do? I think it's really, really even more important now to leverage your internal connections. You've got legacy people, you've got legacy, not just on the medical side, but also the commercial side. You know, there are experienced sales reps in your area who really have a good understanding of what's going on, even not in their own disease state, and frankly, are open to having those interactions and those introductions to those other KOLs that you might need to access. So really look around and get a good understanding within your own company, within your own CRM. You know, you can often go into the database of whatever CRM management system you're using and see who had the last touch point, right? Oh, hey, someone from diabetes talked to this person last. I wonder why. It's all right there, right? You can go back within a couple years and get a good understanding of who met with that person and why, and see if you can get that introduction. I think everyone on this call understands that that personal handoff is usually the most effective. But if you don't have that opportunity, you can at least use those, I call them digital breadcrumbs, right? From Twitter, from webinars, from the publication record. You know, in the past, we were a bit limited to just the publication record, but now we have these other opportunities to leverage and do your homework just like you would if you were setting up your pre-meeting schedule, right? Well, now you have to do a little more digging to get that door opened, but the opportunities are there.
Yeah, excellent points. Lana, any thoughts on this?
Just one more thing to add is really leverage data. Use the 360 view of all your data and build maybe a snapshot of this new KOL relationship. Or it could, I totally agree that you could be an experienced MSL, and all of a sudden your company is getting into a new therapeutic area, a new disease area that you basically have to find out who are the KOLs there. So really leverage data, build a snapshot of sort of a baseline, if you will, of, you know, is this KOL in our CRM network, whether, like Jason mentioned, existing relationships internally I can leverage, and then go to PubMed, right? Any publications, what is this, is he a thought leader? What type of publications he's put out there? And is he doing any trials? And, you know, what about, has he published anything in meetings or webinars, or what is his voice on social media? So really kind of get this complete view. So that will ensure, like, you know, when you go, you're very much prepared. You have all the arsenal you need.
Yeah, excellent points. I got a bunch of questions, rapid fire about this. So a lot of stuff coming in. Mila has asked, what about LinkedIn? Would you guys recommend LinkedIn? You're using it? I think Lana, you mentioned it.
I'm a big believer of LinkedIn, and then LinkedIn really on the healthcare side has exploded since COVID-19. So I say make algorithm work for you, right? Connect with, I don't think you can follow or comment on HCP postings or KOL postings, but, you know, connect with them, follow them, build this network. Then you know, then LinkedIn will basically tailor it towards like who are in your network, and then they'll basically send you notifications of whether they posted anything, whether they've liked or commented or anything. Those are sort of the digital breadcrumbs that Jason just mentioned.
Yep.
Yeah,
Jason?
I love LinkedIn. I
Yeah.
love LinkedIn. I want to clarify the comment I made earlier about LinkedIn was about trying to scrape their data in a coordinated way. That is more difficult than it is in Twitter. As a one-on-one, as a
Yeah.
useful tool for me, it's indispensable. Yeah,
Yeah.
huge, huge, huge. And you can help build your not just for KOLs, but building your own network for your own career, right? I mean,
Yep.
you're out there, and it's, if I've learned anything, it's a small pharma world, right?
Yeah.
And LinkedIn makes it even smaller. So yeah, LinkedIn, not only for that building and establishing that KOL relationship, but has a little bit of a back door. A lot of these academic centers actually screen out pharma emails, but they don't screen out LinkedIn messages. So
Yep.
it's a nice little avenue to where if that KOL is open to having that digital relationship on LinkedIn, you have a nice direct pipeline that maybe, depending on the institution, you don't have.
Excellent. We're getting I think there's some great tips. Got lots of questions around, and I think I'm getting the pulse from the audience that this is fantastic. We're getting some really cool tips. Charles, thank you for the comment. The talk is extremely insightful and actionable. That's great. But we're also getting a lot of questions around. And I'd like for both of you to address this. This is cool technology, some cool resource to leverage these new relationships, and I'd like to have both of you address how, Jason, your team and other MSLs and Lana companies you guys are dealing with. I'll give you two comments here, both same sort of theme. Anna has said, what about Zoom fatigue and HCP interaction? And before we respond, Victor has said, my KOLs are tired from so much webinar. They have more and more proposals from different companies and less time and interest. Do you know if new virtual forms of engagement are being considered in the future? So can you guys talk about that? Jason, I'll let you go first on this. How are you guys
I'll punt,
dealing with that?
I'll punt to Lana on the platform side, because I think she
Yep.
could probably
Yep.
speak more to the future,
Yep.
and I can speak to the current after that.
Perfect. Lana, do you want to go first?
I think Zoom is still there. It's going to be in the near future or the next, probably, okay, it's always dangerous to predict. From next several years, it's going to be predominant sort of a video platform, just because it's ease of use, and also your doctors already using it for their family get-togethers or sort of socially, right? And also on the personal level. So I think some practical tips for this. I mean, we're all sort of in the same situation where you kind of start your Zoom meeting in the morning. Hopefully you don't put yourself on video, you're in PJs, and then like 5 p.m. you're still kind of in the same outfit, right? Hasn't moved from your computer. So maybe the one thing that I found really sort of practical is that maybe leave that 5 minutes, right? Rather than a 30-minute conversation, maybe do a 25. Give your HCP like a 5 minutes to just breathe, or like, take it, okay, where are the kids? Are they doing homework, right? Just, I think that even just a bio break, I mean, being honest, it's really helpful.
Yep.
Yeah,
Jason, you want to tackle that first part?
Could not agree more. I think in this field, you can have an opportunity to stand out by being concise.
Yes.
If it's not 25 minutes, it could even be 20 minutes. But yeah, I think it's looking like 25 minutes is probably going to be the industry standard moving forward. And maybe you stand out that way because you give them a shorter option, and that reminds them that you're being respectful of their time. Another way is just to be honest. Hey, look, I know everyone's doing Zoom calls right now. Do you just want to do a walk and talk on the phone? Right?
Yes.
Just be honest. Give them an option to. I've honestly been doing that with my internal colleagues. Hey, look, do you mind? It's really nice out. Do you mind if I take a walk while we discuss this? And everyone said yes. We're all in the same boat, right? and everyone's looking for a way to kind of break it up. And while I don't know where everyone is on this call right now, the weather here is half decent, so let's take advantage of it while we have it. And so yeah, just be honest and have that open communication to how they want to interact.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jason, if I could just make a quick request, can you just stay inside and don't go on that walk till after this call, though?
Can do. Can do.
Hey, look. So the people that have been in my in our training programs with the MSL Society, all the new MSLs, well, and MSL teams that we've been out there, you've heard me say a million times. I live and die. I'm a big believer in the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid.
Yep.
And you think back to, what do KOLs want? What did they say in the survey? Send me an email, and don't neglect the phone. So if you thinking about Zoom fatigue, I think Jason, you both talked about this, but Jason, you encapsulated it well. Man, just pick up the phone. And do you really need to do another Zoom call? So I think you gotta take a pulse on that, and really feed off that. Um, Good. So I want to, being conscious of time, I want to transition a little bit, and let's think about a little bit about this whole idea. You guys have given a lot of tips, but just here's a brief list of um, tips for engaging with KOLs virtually. Um, Lama, do you want to take this list? Do you want to walk us through, and maybe just highlight some things?
I think we did quite a bit of this already.
Yep.
So I want to add one more thing is that, Jason mentioned instead of 30 minutes, do a 25 minutes or even 20 minutes. And then here I'm thinking, previously you could have like, run into your doctor in the hallways, like, or in the elevator, right? Like, wait a minute, can you just have 2 minutes to do this so-called elevator pitch? I'm seeing the similarities between, like, as an entrepreneur doing startups and getting investors' attention versus MSLs trying to get, doctors' attention, right? So you could, expect the unexpected. And what I would do, like that worked well for me, is, your with the items you want to talk about, prioritize them, make it into, a 2 minute and 5 minute and 20 minute, 30 minutes. So it depends on the situation. You can instantly be prepared to do a 2 minute pitch, right? To like get the all your message across, getting feedback. Also remember, getting feedback.
Excellent.
Let them talk. Yep.
Yeah. Jason, any thoughts on this? Anything else you want to add to this, or anything you want to expand on any of this list?
Yeah, honestly, I think we covered a lot of this sort of organically through the questions you were pulling, so that's great. I'm happy to take any additional questions on this. I think the one thing we didn't really discuss before this slide is leveraging the Sunshine Act in the United States.
Yeah.
That's sort of a little backdoor into understanding who's doing what as well. You can look at that in your KOL mapping if you're going into a new indication, but you can also leverage that as a new MSL. Any clinician that is paid as a ad board or a speaker or whatever it might be,
Yep.
that must be disclosed publicly in the United States. I'm sure it's similar in a lot of other countries. I had a brief medical writing background, and actually that was a very fruitful understanding for competitive intelligence, right? If you're creating education and content, it has to be a couple years out. So looking at Sunshine Act disclosures is actually a really smart way that we used to use in the medical writing world to get an understanding of where the competitors were going, because they have to put their money up a couple years in advance, so you can get sort of a window into their strategy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the specific KOLs that they're using to do that.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Got a couple other comments. I think some people had chimed in and made some comments. Elizabeth said a few of my MSLs have had walking meetings live with their MEs, which medical experts or KOLs, depending on what your company calls them. So I think that's a great tip and reminder. I want to do one more poll. Hopefully this thing was going to advance for me here, but I think we can go forward, but not back. So I don't know what's happening here. But in your app, again, in the app and the phone, we wanted to know, do you have a solution to integrate data from different sources, such as a CRM, free text notes, insights? So give it a second here. Yes or no? See some people moving. That's the fun thing about the live. So what's going to happen is people are like, oh, wait, no, yes, wait a minute. I see other people voting. Maybe not. It'll influence other people's voting. It's kind of fun. Lana, you want to jump in here first? Any comments on this?
I'm not surprised by this result. And I think
Yeah.
industry, yeah, we're still migrating into these digital, even cloud-based solutions such as CRM. And I can't stress enough that the usefulness and value of these free text notes insights. Like I said earlier, I think there are actually now published data and saying leverage companies who can leverage these insights actually become more successful. So since I'm a solution provider from the technology side, this ability to analyzing unstructured data using natural language processing or natural language understanding has been advancing very, very rapidly. So I think this is actually a great golden opportunity. I know the pandemic has been really difficult on everyone, but this could be silver lining is to, leverage technology. Maybe, if you were not on these platforms, migrate to the platform so you can capture all that data. So you can mine, you'll be able to use data to engage your KOLs.
Excellent. Jason, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I am a bit surprised. I think Lana looks at it a bit differently. She's in the provider world and
Yeah.
I was in the field, right? So I think when you're constantly tasked with solving everyone's problems on the back end, you probably see this as confirming. For me, I'm actually surprised that 37%. I feel like that's even high. So I'm actually impressed with the number. I'm impressed with the digital savvy of the group, to be honest with you. Now beyond just simply having a CRM, right? I know that in smaller companies or even in different TAs within larger companies, sometimes an Excel file is what is utilized. So if it's utilizing an integrated CRM simply to collate all the information, then I think this is low. If it's actually utilizing digital platforms to utilize natural language processing, machine learning, exactly the way Lana was talking about, then I'm impressed. Actually, I think this is actually quite high from someone coming in the field.
Yeah, yeah, and I think this insight piece, actually, all of these aspects are increasingly important, and especially in a situation where we're seeing from multiple surveys now have confirmed that we're getting less access, but to KOLs, but when we do, it is value, and there's value exchange. But then the question becomes, how are we capturing this, and what are we taking away from this? Because again, the end goal should be for all MSLs to add value to the relationships and build that value over time. Um, any other questions on this before we move on? From the audience. We've got a few minutes here. We've got lots of questions. They're kind of all over the place. But let me jump in here and ask another question. I'm having a technical issue with advancing, so let me see if I can advance the slide here. So what I'd like to find out from all of you is and I'm going to start with Jason on this, and I know it's stop sharing on me just for a second. So you're looking at the blank screen here. Jason, Jamie has asked, we going back to the email exchange. He's asking and saying we're discouraged, told not to use email for KOL interactions with clinical data because it's a written document from the company that hasn't been approved for distribution. Thoughts?
Yeah, great point. Absolutely. I limit all my email conversations with KOLs to logistics, right? When are we
Yeah.
meeting? When are we talking? unless there's been a specific, hey, if they ask for a medical information request via email, okay, I can compliantly provide that in the way I'm supposed to, but I would never have a engagement over email. Absolutely not. Yeah. So I that's a great point. I'm really glad it was brought up.
Yep. Lana, any thoughts on that? Anything else to add to that?
No, I don't have anything to add on this one.
Yeah, Jason nailed it, right? That's right.
Yep.
He stole the thunder. That's right.
Yep.
So another question that has certainly been brought up is Dan has brought up some sites restrict their clinicians from using Zoom on network systems. What platform have you found to be have you found to be more acceptable to those? Jason, I'm going to start with you on that as well.
Ooh, I gotta say, I haven't had any problems with that. So I haven't really had to create a workaround. Lana, has that been a problem for you?
Yeah, we see quite a bit. Microsoft Teams is a great alternative.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yep.
Yep. Yep.
WebEx is really clunky, doesn't perform that well, particularly if your HCPs, KOLs use Mac, is a world of hurt. Yeah, so Microsoft Teams is a great alternative.
Yeah, and I think obviously it's going to be very specific to to that particular situation and that institution. So yeah. So here's another interesting question. Lauren has asked if our company prohibits free text notes, should we challenge this notion? Because you think about this whole idea that, why is this important? Why is this relevant? Well, we're trying to build, remember, relationships. And part of that relationship building is gathering insights and building on that. So I just want to put some context because some people might be thinking, what does this have to do with this? Everything. Jason, any comments on that?
Yeah, I'm surprised. Clinical insights are digital. That's our currency, right? That's our medical affairs currency. So I'm a bit surprised by that. I guess there's ways around it if you wanted to make an institutional change. Make sure your comments are de-identified. Make sure they're not linked to the clinician, so you can have an understanding of, hey, look, this is a piece of information, right? And this is a potentially valuable piece of information for the company. And it doesn't really matter in a sense who said it, right? Because if you get enough of these insights that either refute or support that point, you start to understand the trends. So, I think de-identification is probably your way around that if you want to make an institutional change. But Lana, I'm a bit surprised. You have to have some record of your insights. In my estimation.
Exactly, right. Think of insights are your voice of customers. If you care about your customers, you should care about VOCs.
Yeah.
So there might be some regulatory concerns, so I can't really comment on that. Yeah, Jason, what do you think? De-identification is a great approach.
I guess, yeah, de-identification, it's really, really hard, I think, to make any progress in strategy if you don't have a record of what the feedback from the field is. So yeah, maybe it's an opportunity for growth in your group.
Yeah, because I'm wondering if you're not doing it, what are you doing? Right? I mean,
Yeah.
I'd want to know if I were managing a team of MSLs, you're going out there and you're engaging with KOLs and there's no record of it, certainly no follow-up. What are you
Yep.
doing? And I guarantee you at some point KOLs are going to be wondering that too. So
Yep.
yeah, I think it's important, but I know that that can be a challenge with depending on the team. So I guess thinking about other ways and just I guess the final point here, and then I've got a final question. Um, I guess can you guys both address from the standpoint of engaging both new and established KOLs? Is there any best practice that has proven to be most effective, or an aha moment, or probably been a lot of them, but maybe one or two big aha moments, Jason, that you've learned throughout this pandemic?
Yeah, I know I'm biased, but leveraging social to find new and up and coming KOLs is really important. And it's because of the time. Time and with respect to two capacities. One is that it takes a lot of time to generate a traditional KOL profile in the traditional spheres of publishing, but within 4, 5, 6 months, you can actually become a pretty significant influencer in online circles. And by definition, that person becomes a thought leader. So social media is a really good way of finding up and coming KOLs if you're trying to differentiate new versus established KOLs. And the other thing is, we're in the middle of a crisis that changes seemingly by the week, and that's just not the domain of the traditional spheres. That's new media, and so you have an opportunity to leverage that depending on how close your disease state is tied to the current pandemic.
Yep. Excellent. Lana, any thoughts on that?
I agree. In addition to insights I mentioned earlier, I think social is really, really important. It's going to become even more important over time, even when we settle back into a semi-normal, just because, the DOLs and KOLs are there. And also another thing I want to mention is that, even doctors, they're human, right? We have these human nature. We like to be liked, commented, and your kind of standing in social media is really important, right? So sometimes when you talk about science, it may not be as effective as hey, I saw you have 50 likes on the post you did. Really grab attention. Yeah, very effective.
Yeah. Excellent. We're running out of time here, but I always like to end all these sessions. I mean, the conference really is meant to be sharing information and best practices. So I'm going to end with that and ask both of you, and Lana, I'm going to start with you. What is one practical tip, best practice, that you could share with the audience, regardless if we have Huma's technology or if we have our own Lana on our team, right? We don't have those resources. What is one practical tip or piece of advice that you could give us that will help us build KOL relationships in this digital new normal?
My practice, my advice is that even though you may not have the technology at your fingertips to access data, but access, the data you can. Sometimes, PubMed or the clinicaltrials.gov, even these virtual congress are really great resources to find that information. So use
Excellent.
it. Yeah. It
Excellent.
takes
Yep.
more time, but yes, it can be done.
Put the time in, right?
Yes,
Absolutely.
exactly.
Jason, same question. One practical piece of advice or tip, maybe something you guys have learned, an aha that will help us build KOL relationships digitally in this new normal.
Yeah, I think we've tried to cover as many as we could as far as reaching out and building relationships. So I hate to piggyback on what Lana just said, but I think so she's looking at it from the provider side. I'll talk to the same point in the field, and that's take these free opportunities to determine whether you need that higher digital platform. You might, and you can do those pilot experiments. You can do that initial work, that legwork for free. You can do simple searches on Twitter, on Instagram, all these different platforms to get an understanding of what type of material is out there that's for you in your disease state. And then you say, wow, this is way too much. I need to employ another level of technology. But you can do that homework at home. We're all home, right? You can do it from your desk right now and get a better understanding that if you need some help, and then take an accounting for what that help might look like.
Yep. Excellent. Excellent. I know we're out of time, but I want to certainly thank Jason and Lana for being here. Really appreciate you guys being a part of this. There is their LinkedIn URLs. We're speaking about LinkedIn, so just inundate them. Reach out. That's what, they asked for it. But no, in seriousness, I think this was a great session, very practical, some great advice. Lana, I want to thank you and the Huma team for stepping up and being a part of this, and not just for, again, the sponsorship, but actually adding some real value and tips. And Jason, my appreciation to you as well. So I think both of you really appreciate everything that you provided here today.
Thank you. That was great.
Oh, thank you. Always, anytime.
Awesome. All right, everybody. So we're going to end the session there. Next session is in about 30 minutes. Look for it on your app, and we'll see you at the next session. Thanks, everyone. We'll sign off here.